So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Skip Conover, and today we're going to have a presentation by Sherrie Lovler about her uh, artistic process and how creating art comes from a deeper part of the psyche than just the conscious part. And I'm particularly looking forward to this because I took art classes in our local senior art center, and the teachers there were teaching us to replicate what we saw exactly, and therefore trying to turn human beings into cameras, which maybe was important 500 years ago, but today that's not what art is about. And so I'm going to invite Sherrie to hold forth and tell us about calligraphy and poetry and art and how they come together. So, Sherrie, I'm going to make this a speaker view, and it's your turn to talk.
Okay, well, thank you so much for having me here. I'm very excited, and welcome to everyone that's partaking or seeing it later. So my first thing I want to bring up is on my website, and this was Skip, your invitation to everyone, was a little poem that said, "My poems are not poems." This is a Ryōkan poem from 1758, I think it is. When you know that my poems are not poems, then we can speak about poetry. And it's something that just grabbed me, I don't know, 30 years ago or something. It's this tiny little book called Dewdrops on a Lotus Leaf. And, um, and so that stuck with me for a long time. And what I say now is that my poetry is a path. It's a way in, it's my spiritual practice. And the whole purpose for me for writing poems was not to have good poems, because when I started writing, I had no idea I would have good poems, and I'm quantifying good as what I like, because I know it's very subjective. Um, so I started writing poetry as a way to live a deeper life. My goal was to live a deeper life. I didn't know poetry would be that path, but it started to be, and then I followed through with that. And so around 2007, I set up a practice for myself where twice a week, and I still do this, twice a week, on Tuesday mornings and Friday mornings, I wake up, get a cup of tea, go back to bed, and bring my poetry journal. I do everything by hand. All my poetry is written by hand, and other spiritual books, and I'll talk about that in a minute, and then write. And what I actually do is set the scene for poetry to flow. So it doesn't feel like it's a channeled kind of thing, but it also doesn't feel like I do this myself. And part of it is I'm not a trained poet. I am a trained painter and a calligrapher, especially. I've done calligraphy since I was 15 and still do it. So I know what training for something is like. I also know that there's a point in your training that you have to go beyond the training and basically have to kind of dissolve it, and finally you come through. So my hope with the poetry was that I would come through from the beginning. I wouldn't have to learn and unlearn and, do that kind of stuff. And since my goal wasn't to write great poetry, that all worked. So I would actually just like to start with a poem and a painting so you get some sense, or maybe two of them, you get some sense of what it is I do, and then I'll go into a little bit more of how I do it. So I'm going to maybe first read the poem plain. It's a recent poem. It's called The Winter of My Coming. It is the winter of my coming, the long drawn out days of retreat. Over and over I ask myself, how do I live today? As if on its own it is consequential, as if every moment is recorded and revisited, as if every moment matters. We live in the time we were born into. This one, the beginning of the end, or the renewal. We don't know which yet. Fires, floods, pandemic, freedom's decline. The hidden and the seen all mixed together in the same cauldron. We drink of it daily. It tosses and turns in our stomachs and minds. Each of us full yet hungry, hungry for life to begin again. We want what we had, but those days are gone. We move forward into the end or the renewal. Every choice leads to the answer. Every moment metered and noted. Every morning asking, how do I live today? Every step positioned as if it matters, because it's the only thing that does. So when I began doing this practice, I would write the poem and then kind of hold the poem within me as I paint. This time, what's happening lately is that they're happening in the same week or sometimes even the same month. But I will do the painting and then realize, wow, this goes with this poem. And then actually read the poem to the painting. And if I get chills, I kind of know it works. So I'm not illustrating the poem. So I'm going to share my screen now and show you this image for this piece. And it was a painting that when I started painting, I really don't know where I'm going, but I started getting, and by the way, the enzo, the circle is what came last. So I just kind of like dug into the paper. It had a little bit of collage on it. Some of the scribble in the upper right of the like 1 o'clock of the enzo is gold leaf, but it's 12 karat gold leaf. So it's actually looks like silver. But it took a lot of my aggression and a lot of my kind of scratching and the words, what I call asemic, well, what is called asemic calligraphy. It's the mark making, but it's marks without words. We bring to it what we feel. You know, we're not told how to read it. And I've been going more and more into that kind of language. And as I was finishing this painting, it just lacked the foreground. It's like, even as abstract, or especially as abstract painting, you really need to know the elements and principles of design, how to make a painting work. And so it lacked the foreground. And I did what I love to do is it's the Japanese meditation practice of doing the circle, the enzo. And then I did one on that. And the thing with this is you only have one chance. I mean, this was either going to make or break the painting, and happily it made the painting, but we never know. So let me do one more pair. I'm going to stop the share first so we don't get bogged down with another painting. But so this is another one. And, you know, lately my poems have been about the pandemic. It's like, sort of what else is there to write about? Well, there's a lot, but so that's been, of course, forefront in my mind. This one is called Soft Emergence. I have no idea what it will be like to hug people again, to be close, to look them in the eye without a screen between us, to see their smile in real time. I can't imagine eating out of the same bowl, taking a handful of nuts that others have touched, buying food without washing it, not seeing people as carriers of disease, not scrubbing down everything in sight. When this is over, will my cells jump for joy? Will I come out okay? Or will there be dark holes that linger, the scent of rubbing alcohol, bringing it all back? I wonder if my heart will explode when the veil lifts, or will there be a soft emergence, one foot put slowly in front of the other, not too far, not too fast, like toes dipping into a cold stream, and pace my arrival gently into the new world, whenever that may be. And I'm going to go into screen share again and go to my second poem, my second painting. So this one also happened, the painting here happened first. And I had put it up on a website. It had a different title. And I put it up on a Facebook page and someone wrote Soft Emergence. And I wrote to him and I said, wow, I like that as a title better. And then from that title, the whole poem came. So they work differently. And I always allow, whatever process is unfolding to let it unfold. So this was sort of these odd flowery kind of things, we're going to emerge as a different world. And some are recognizable, some are not. There's the underground. A lot of my work has the underground layer, the overground. There's sort of different layers in this one. And then that one calligraphic stroke, holding that little circle up. And that was my make or break point. That's the one I had one chance to make that good. So I practice and then I go at it. So I'd like to talk a little bit how I write. Does anyone want to say anything at this point?
I just want to say your poem was absolutely beautiful. I mean, it really touched my heart. It really describes the times we're in very well. So thank you for that. And your painting shows dark gray and then it moving toward the light gray and this kind of like a bare sketch outline of a perhaps flower. I guess you can stretch your imagination, almost like a Rorschach form. But you know what also brought to mind the first painting that you did with a non-verbal
Semic writing.
Yes, calligraphic writing, the movie Arrival. Because again, the aliens came, right? And they had almost this cryptic, almost Asian form of calligraphy. And a lot of calligraphy is emotional when you do that kind of, I mean, it's like a dance. Your whole body moves into the calligraphy. And I would think that the aliens are telepathic and they are more feeling type. So the communication is of a different level than how we humans communicate. So you talk about primitive, we're going even further back into the primordial.
Yes, and I loved that movie. I loved seeing all that writing back and forth, and I actually I did a one-woman show in 2017, inspired by that. I've done several paintings really inspired by it too. So thank you for bringing that up.
Sherrie, I'd like to say that rather than good poetry, there's an exquisite quality to it. And to me, I notice a harmonization between the rhythm and cadence of your poetic verse feel and the music of the language, that in two different styles, in two different paintings, in two different poems, they both felt like the same story, one told textually, orally, storytelling tradition, that was in the same family, if not an identical twin to the painting, speaking in a visual language. And that's really resonant.
Thank you so much for that. That is, you got me, and I feel seen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
I feel seen.
And by the way, Tim apparently can't be with us on Zoom today, but he is watching on YouTube and he says, nice work.
Okay. Of course, he's an amazing artist as well. So
right.
I appreciate that.
That was nice work, Sherrie. And you did say that you wrote the poem before you did the painting. Is that correct? I just wanted to clarify that.
The first one, I wrote the poem first, and then I did the second, and then I did the painting. The second one, I did the painting first, and then I wrote the poem.
And then the poem. Okay. Oh, so you can go both ways, back and forth.
Ambidextrous.
Oh, that was great. Yeah.
Great, thank you. So I'm going to talk a little bit about how I write the poetry and why that is so important to me. So 2007, when I was really looking for a way to go deeper in my life, I started doing some reading. I was reading Eckhart Tolle and some kind of spiritual reading at the time. And well, let's back it up just a little bit, because I was at the time online, and I was dating someone, and we started writing poetry to each other. And we did these beautiful poems back and forth, and ended up publishing a book of those poetry, 6 of his poems, 6 of my poems, and then the calligraphy that went with it. And then after 2 months, I sort of needed a different way to start writing poetry. So I was, actively looking, because I loved doing the poetry. I loved being able to enter that part of my life, which actually I used to do when I was a teenager as well. So I picked up from that seed that I had started many years ago. But so I was actively looking for a way to continue writing. And so I started doing this reading and then writing from whatever inspired me. So it felt like fresh wisdom infiltrating me. And I didn't have to be so wise myself. It was just like, oh, there. And sometimes I would read and I would read till something would strike me in the book. And then I'd kind of either get the chills or something, and then just let the poem flow. And the other part of this is, because I considered this a spiritual practice, I felt I needed the help of other poets, as I call them, my dead poets. So so when I wake up and I get my tea and I go to bed and sit with my notebook, I invite the spirits of specific dead poets. And I start with Dr. Maya Angelou, and I include Angelise Arian. She's not a poet, but a spiritual teacher. Seamus Heaney, because I just love how that rolls off my tongue. It's just the sound of his name. I love it. John O'Donoghue, Edna St. Vincent Millay, Mary Oliver. I'll tell you in a minute where she used to be before she passed away. Rumi and Rilke. And I think that's about it on the current, and Mary Oliver. Well, yeah. And then I borrow the Living Angels of David White, the poet. And it used to be Mary Oliver, but now she's in the other group. So then I started listening to a lot of Dr. Martin Shaw's, he's a storyteller and mythologist, listening to him, and I met him, and just his kind of energy, I wanted to include that. So now I borrow the Living Angels of Martin Shaw as well. So I welcome them all. I don't visually see them, but I go one by one and say, welcome, welcome, welcome. And then I often check in with my chakras, and I've done some work and found my chakra animals. So I check in with my chakra animals and see how they're doing. And then I take my book and I start reading. So early on, the book that really captivated me right from the beginning, after I was kind of looking around, was Bill Plotkin's Nature and the Human Soul. And he's a depth psychologist. I don't know if you're all familiar with his work, but it's this 450-page book of the circle of life, of going from birth to teenhood and everything up to old age, wise people and death, from an eco point of view instead of the ego point of view. And I really took to that book, and I would read like 1 or 2 pages every time I would write poetry. And I just kept writing poem after poem after poem, and ended up having enough. So I wrote those poems. And then in 2010, I decided that at that point, my painting, I was going through a transition in my painting. So the poetry kept happening, and I was reaching this depth and this just interest of living that was happening. And I wanted to bring that over into my paintings. And so I started a blog in 2010, where my rule for the blog was that every poem had to have a painting. And so it was a way to push myself. It's like if you're an artist, you're self-employed, if you don't have commission kind of things, you need to create your own projects, or that's how I felt. And so I created this project. And at that time I had like 20 or 30 poems I really liked. So I needed to really start painting. And I wanted the poems, the paintings to come as fast and easily as the poetry did. And so at first they were very quick. And then I started falling behind. And so I looked at all my old paintings and I started using some old paintings. And then the real work began. It was like, all right, now I'm caught up. I really got to start painting. And so I did. And that was when every poem I wrote had a little drawing next to it or colors or something that would start the painting. And so when I went to paint, I had a starting point instead of just a total blank page. And slowly it was like building my intuition. It was like slowly trusting that, that if all of a sudden my brain said, try some indigo, I would do it, or use some gold leaf here, and I would do it. And it was just like this open flow. And I know the painting, you know, that where the first time it was totally intuitive. And that was really exciting to me. And so now I have over, I think it's 105 poems on my blog. It's natureartandpoetry.com. And so like my whole progression, because I just didn't want to be scared and just say, well, you know, the earlier stuff's not good, but you know, whatever. The whole thing is up there. And so the other part about writing the way I write is that I don't feel like I do it alone. And if it fails, it's not just me failing. If it goes well, it's not just me going well. It's like, this is the collaborative effort between what is and me. And I love being in that, like the conduit, but it takes me. I have to show up, and I have to show up in the way I do. And so it's been a really rewarding process. So I'm going to stop there for now and see if anybody has any comments or similar experiences or anything like that.
We have a small group, so just speak up, unmute your mic and speak up if you have a comment.
Okay, I'll continue. Then, so I also went from a progression. So the poetry started getting better. Now I'm using, all right, so I finished Bill Plotkin's book. And again, I was kind of at a loss of what book to keep going with, but different books would just start turning up. There's this one, the Almanac of the Soul, I think it's called. And it goes through the 365 days. And that's my standard now. I wake up and I read what's in, what's on that page, and it kind of brings me back to nature. And so that's been really helpful. I just started reading Michael Mead's The Water of Life, or Water of Life. I'm still on his preface, and I've written like 4 or 5 poems inspired by that. So I think I might have found a winner with that book. And it's just exciting. And sometimes I'm reading John O'Donohue, Anna Karam I read. I just recently bought Beauty and wrote one poem about beauty. And someone said, well, you should read John O'Donohue's Beauty book. And it was like, well, I am. You know, so you know, there's lots of parallels. And then I did a painting. Oh, I don't actually have that one to show here, but a painting inspired by the poem Beauty. So
The Almanac of the Soul.
Oh, thank you, John.
Very good.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I'll put that in the chat.
Okay, that'd be great. And then I'll move it
Wonderful
over.
daily meditation kind of thing.
Mhm.
Yes. Then, so my beginning of calligraphy, I'm going to go into a different part of the slideshow now and share some of my beginnings. I'm going to share some of my very beginnings. This was optional if I was going to do this or not, but but we all begin somewhere. And it's sort of like that acorn inside. And like, what did you do as a child that you want to tap into today? And I actually started writing when I was in 4th grade, but this was a card I made for my sister. So between when I was 16 and 20, I did greeting cards for everyone I knew, my parents, my friends. They were all birthday cards, and they always had my own poem on it. So this is my kind of weird calligraphy at that time. I won't read this one, but anyway, but that's what I did as a teenager. And then I stopped doing that to go on a whole different path. And after I graduated college, my partner and I, who's not my partner anymore, my partner and I did the whole back to the land thing in upstate New York. I mean, we were freezing, but we built our own home. We heated with wood, and we did a festival every year from for 9 summers, where people came to our land and learned the skills of back to the land. So this was starting in 1978, was our first festival. And then we published a magazine. So because this is all hand lettered. And this is where I started getting really good in calligraphy. And so I was trained, and I found met my teacher, Dick Beasley, who taught me about abstract painting in terms of letters. So this is a painting I did, but in his style. So this was the beginning of my learning about abstract art. And I kind of pushed that as far as I could until I realized that when he felt he could have made this painting, I realized I need to find my own style. And so that was sort of my soul searching, and eventually into the poetry that led to what I do now. The other side of my life is I have a calligraphy website where I sell calligraphy prints. And this is how I make most of my money. It's an online business. So in the time of COVID, I actually still have a business. I've been doing this since 1996 and selling online since then. I had my first website back then. It's inkmonkey.com. And I sell things like the Desiderata and St. Francis Prayer. I have about 20 different prints up there, the Serenity Prayer and prints like that. And then when I said the first poetry I was doing, I was, my partner was Anthony Lawler, and we published a book on our poems. So this was our first book. It was called 2 is 1. I designed the entire book myself. I learned InDesign. I'm pretty adept at web design too. So I've learned all that, the background stuff I needed to do the book. And we had it printed in China with a local print broker. So I worked with someone personally. And this is a page, there's 12 poems and artwork. These are a couple of the pieces. Again, the enzo comes up for me, it has for years. And then, and I say that as a lead in to my current book, which is called On Softer Ground. So this came out in 2016, and it has 24 poems and paintings in it. And for this, I actually won a Most Outstanding Book Design Award from IPI Publishers, which is the largest independent publishing company award thing. So, I want to go back to a couple earlier poems. So you heard some of my more recent poems. So when I was working with the first book, with Bill Plotkin's book, and going through the phases of life, I wrote this poem for my nephew. And I can actually show it to you as I read it to you. So this is called Another Awakening. The rebel in you energizes the rebel in me. That long removed, satisfied, carefree, sleeping rebel of mine, I feel it stirring. Yes, that gut-wrenching music of your rebel has invaded and shaken me and reminded me there are other ways to live. And though I am beyond my teenage years, I do still have memories and desires and lusts. And while I know your rough waters are alive in me, I also know my still waters are alive in you. And I wrote that for my nephew just before I was taking him on a trip to Italy for his high school graduation present. And he introduced me to heavy metal. So that was the, I mean, I like heavy rock, but heavy metal was a different story. So that was that one. And this is another poem that's in my book. Awakening is not in my book, but this one, Deeper, is in my On Softer Ground book. Come home to your soul. This temporary world will only lead you to the edge. Nothing will get you past this one. Your desire to know that place deep within. The ground is not here to walk on. It is a thin layer to cross. Slip through into the underworld, the belly, the place you long to be, where wisdom dwells. Go naked. And I'm going to share one more poem, from my book as well, called Next Phase. The endless days of opening on silent ground that cannot be felt call to me. It is time to leave my small world of comfort. The truth of my existence is here, now, ready to take me on her flight of surrender. Surrender to who I am and resist no more. Surrender to faith, to healing power, to love. Surrender to the one life I am here to live. The apprenticeship is over. So a lot of these poems are about my own growth process and written for me in a certain way. I guess they're all written for me and or to me as well, talking to myself, and maybe it'll resonate with talking to other people as well. This was a painting done with a piece of cardboard, around a 4-inch piece of cardboard dipped in ink. And then I swirled it in the center and then made some marks on top of that. So each of them have a different technique. I'm not stuck in technique. And so it's sort of hard when you want to do an art show and people expect you to like push one aspect further and further. Well, I kind of push the dual aspect. I push the poetry. I keep, hoping my poems get better. I keep pushing the painting. So the theme is the combination of the two rather than I like this style, I'm going to keep doing it over and over. And so I keep growing. And a lot of my influence, as you possibly have noticed, is an Asian influence. And so my calligraphy is Western calligraphy. I learned, like the illuminated manuscripts and Gothic and Italic and Roman lettering. I don't know Chinese calligraphy, although I dabble in the marks a little bit. But there's a strong Eastern part of my work, and that's, I've done Tai Chi for many years. I still continue to do Qigong. When I was around 12, I discovered, I think it was Lao Tzu's work, the importance of living. I would go to this library, this new library, and at the same time I would take out the yearling because I was like 12 years old. I would stop and read in the philosophy section this book, and I was just fascinated that people thought about the body and about happiness and real things, and so that has always infused my life. And then when I started using the brush, calligraphy I learned with a broad nib pen, a calligraphy hard metal pen. The more and more I started using the brush, the more the Asian flew into me, and that feeling of the part you can't control. And wabi-sabi, it's like what is, and to appreciate the imperfections. And so that has become a large part of my work, and understanding the chi, the flow, the empty space. And it's like James Hillman said that Western painters want to fill up the whole space. They fear emptiness. It's like the Chinese want the emptiness. That's the important spot. I mean, I forget who it was that said, but the hardest part of the painting is the white space. And that's also the uncontrolled space. So it's a whole different way of painting and being in the world to see that. I remember there was a show at the De Young in San Francisco of modern, well, sort of modern Chinese painting against expressionist art. And there was a painting by Franz Klein, who does these really big black strokes, next to a Chinese painter, and I forget who the Chinese painter was. But Franz Klein would paint the white space. And to him, it was important that, to him, I believe he was thinking that the white space is as equal as the black space. The negative is as equal as the positive. And so, but still he filled the whole painting, either with white or black. Whereas the Asian painting, it was like this gorgeous stroke and the rest was left as is. So it was a nice juxtaposition of the two painters.
I just want to make a comment with your last painting and your poetry, because it talked about, I think, well, the flavor I got was you were centered, and then you're like going out of your boundary, and it matches, your painting matches your poetry, because here you were whole and it's centered, and then the brush stroke is a woof and you're out of there, meaning you broke the boundary of the circle. And it was just a beautiful way of going out beyond. So if anything, I'd call it the beyond.
I like that. Yes.
And
Sherrie,
go ahead. Well, the last thing was your Asian influence. I'm just wondering if you've ever kind of like entertained and imagined in your mind that if you were perhaps in your past life some Chinese calligrapher, and now you've developed all these talents from many generations, and now it's coming to you, in this form, in your 21st century, format.
I love that thought. I've not spent a lot of time thinking about that, but I have noted that since I was a kid, I was drawn to that. So yes, quite possible. Thank you.
I was especially noticing the white space almost first, because there was that took 8 seconds, and you were, like Josh said, in and out quick. No one got hurt. But it is the kind of, it's the sumi brush is further along than watercolor. You can't mess up watercolor. You get one shot across the whole thing. But when you have the one stroke, that's it. And you're in and out, and you're either off the wall or the modulation, and it squirts. Sometimes that's cool, but sometimes you actually, you stumble and fall, and okay, new piece of paper. But I was noticing the white space, and I always call it the synapse, where the viewer connects. But what was interesting is I have a fun new phrase for it now, because when I was looking, especially at that one that was the cardboard piece, it felt like advanced synapse to be invisibridge. So it was like, where'd that come from? I don't know, but thank you, because it evolved the synapse. And I guess I'd kind of gotten bored with synapse or interstice, and it felt too, I need to footnote it. But invisibridge, I don't have to explain it. I could just, like, it's kind of asemic words. It didn't have to have meaning. So thank you for the white space piece, because in your pieces, to me, it's a coupled resonance, where it is the counterpoint, or that which makes the other. So, and your form actually is the dark, and then the light is the contrast of the shadow. So it's interesting to me that there's a flip there that I find very, again, haven't gotten off the word resonant yet, so I'm just going to keep resonating. So
Thank you.
Well, speaking of resonating, I was reading some poems from On Softer Ground, and something struck me. It was the poem called Saying Goodbye.
Oh.
And you talked about see beyond stuff that fathers and daughters hold. Well, I rearranged that of seeing mothers that sons hold. And coming to that awareness, but that was just an outstanding piece. I don't know if there was an image to it because I was just reading a preview.
Oh, let me read the poem. Hold on a second.
Okay, yeah, it's a beautiful poem, and it, to me, it depicts an experience that I had with seeing my mother, I thought, for the first time. So when she reads it, she'll read it from a father to daughter standpoint, but I read it from the mother to son standpoint. So it really had a real impact on me. So I really appreciated that.
Thank you. I'm going to show you. This is the inside of the book.
Okay, yeah.
And that's the painting.
And that's the image.
That goes with it. It's actually a bigger painting. I cropped it for the book, but it has these little, and this was actually some sacred geometry. This was done with compasses or a compass. And there were 5 of those for my mother, my father, and the 3 kids on the big sheet of paper.
Oh, cool.
So, saying goodbye. It took our whole lives to see each other, to see beyond the stuff that fathers and daughters hold. For a second, I saw you. I saw you as you always wanted to be seen. And in that moment, love flowed between us like never before. It was more than knowing it was goodbye. It was, in fact, hello. And though it seemed late in our lives, it was perfect because I saw you. I saw you with my soul, and though words cannot express that feeling, I know you took it with you as much as I know anything.
Yeah, that was my experience. Of course, it was with my mother when I saw her like that. And I knew at that moment that that was the thing. And even though it was late in times, you know, it was an experience that I had that I've never discussed about because I've never heard anybody write about it.
Oh,
And
wow.
this struck me as that was just absolutely fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you. You're welcome. Yeah.
You certainly
I had
touched me.
similar kind of experience myself. When my mother died, she died in hospice on Oahu. But it was the other way around. It's like for the first time in my life, really, she saw me. And we had a tremendous ending. It was just really an amazing thing. And this poem really resonates with me too.
Wow. Yeah, it's amazing. Throughout my whole life, now that I think of my father, this is what I think of first, is like that goodbye and the richness. You know, we made it. We got to that real juicy place.
Yep, you were going to say something, and I could see that you're pretty emotional about it.
Well, you know, going both ways toward my daughters and my mother. You know, John just mentioned his mother in hospice, and I found that absolutely the sweetest time I had with my mother was the 2 weeks in the hospital before she died. And I stayed in the room with her, and she revealed certain family secrets that are not relevant here, but I've talked about them before. That special moment, that time was just really sweet. And, you know, I have some healing to do with at least one of my daughters, and I'm working on that with Tim. It's a secret what we're doing until our birthday. But your piece really touched me. So that's all I have to say.
And this is why art is so important. Art and poetry, because, you know, we think we're so different from people, and then, you know, we find out inside we're all the same. And
Oh yeah.
touch each other. And so it's real important that throughout every weird thing that happens, that the arts do stay alive.
Yeah.
Sherrie, what's really refreshing too, that that I feel is so moving, is there are no artist statements. You have the voice of the art and your voice, and that's a transposition that's super powerful, and I think as a whole, textually, visually, poetic. I on any of these, I haven't felt anything other than connection. You know, in a sense, I'm on a hayride, and you're taking us wherever you're taking us, and it's just effortless. And I think that's the alignment of your words with the painting, but it's coming to be more of one whole voice, of the voice of the art itself through you and from you.
Mm-hmm.
And Gunnar Omarsson, who I believe from this morning said he's from Iceland, said he's feeling it over here.
Thank you.
He was with me this morning, so I think he said he was from Iceland this morning.
Yeah, thank you. I'm really, really touched by that.
Jordan,
Can I
I
add
think.
comment?
Go
Anna?
ahead.
Can I
Go
say,
ahead.
yeah. Well, I love your art. I love your poetry. You know that. I think that Mary Oliver is very significant in your circle of advisory, because her poetry that was critiqued sometimes that it's too populist or too understandable, right? But that's what made it so beautiful, that anyone can understand it, because I don't need to go, well, I'm not sophisticated enough to understand complicated poetry, which would be a complex that I have. And because that's how we grew up. And your poetry, like Mary Oliver's, is just, it's like the art, exactly like the person before Jordan said, it just touches. And I could, you know, I was thinking about my last time with my father. It's just so understandable and so real that it just opens your heart and your soul. And that's the best that you can ask for to do with your craft, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yes, definitely. Thank you. Yeah.
And Michael is saying he's feeling it from Edinburgh, Scotland right now. So you're touching people across the world, Sherrie.
Thank you. Thank you all. Okay. I have another poem from my book. It's called The Sacred Life, and I will share that as I read that. And this one is a very powerful painting. It's on a full sheet of paper, which means it's around 22 by 30 inches. I did the center stroke, the enzo, with a lot of ink and water, and it just kind of spread out like that, sort of like this weird animal creature. And then the alphabet is actually behind it. The red paint was painted around the circle. So it's a white piece of paper that this was done on. And then it's some Indian handmade paper, and the paper all curled up when I put so much water on it and painted. And so it's sort of alive. And it's called The Sacred Life.
Could you tell us what you mean by the enzo? What is that?
The circle, it's the Japanese word for the Zen meditation practice that Japanese do, enzo, E-N-S-O. And so it's really the circle.
Mm-hmm.
So in practice, they would do hundreds of circles. But the thing is, when you do a circle, you could tell if you're present, like you said earlier with my next phase poem, I was present for it. Well, the thing is, if all of a sudden your mind goes somewhere else, it shows in the circle. So it's like everything gets recorded in the circle. So that's where I'm coming from. Is that clear? Does that make sense enough?
Yeah, I guess so. I mean, this looks like it's one hand swipe, which is what a Japanese calligraphy would
That's what
be.
it is. Yes.
And
So it's all done.
so how is it accomplished with all the different colors there?
Oh, okay. So the circle part was done with ink and a lot of water. So when I went around the circle, because it had so much water, it spread. It wasn't one of these neat little circles. And then on top of that, I used some powdered gold. So I just took some powdered gold and sprinkled it. And so where
Wonderful.
on the right side, like at 3 o'clock, it has a lot of gold on it.
Uh-huh.
So I went back into it, which is sort of a no-no in Asian painting. It's like you get one chance, but I went back in.
Wow.
And then I did the alphabet behind it, which is just sort of just a bunch of letters there, in what's called resist. It's sort of like a glue. And it came through my pen. And then when I painted the red over the letters, but around the circle. So all those nooks and crannies, I went around them 5 times the color I wanted. So this was an intense painting. And then I felt it needed something else for stability, because I'm always asking the painting, like, what do you need next? And people often ask, how do you know when a painting is done? And I like to say it's when there's no more questions. When nothing says, should I try that? You know, what if I did?
So you said you did 5 layers of red to get
5
this?
layers of red paint to get the red, and it was gouache, which is opaque watercolor.
And then the red, the resist is something like gum arabic or something.
Yeah, something like that. It's like a watercolor resist,
Mm-hmm.
and sort of like rubber cement. It ends up being like, but it's thin enough to go through my pen. And so then I painted over it, and then I take it off. I take the glue off. So what remains is the white paper.
Right.
But it's not perfect. You see a little red in there. And then
fantastic. And what is this piece called?
This is called The Sacred Life. There comes a time when you want to run. Run as far away as you can. Run from your life. Run from the task that is so large it cannot be done. But your feet don't move. And slowly life opens up and help appears. Not in the form you expect, but in secrets and winding roads and gateways into the world you long for, but don't know how to reach. And the task doesn't get easier, but life gets more beautiful, with a richness you couldn't imagine and a warmth you had never felt, as you directly face the immensity of what you are called to do.
Sherrie, do you have prints of this, or?
I have prints. I have prints of probably everything I've shown you. On my art and poetry.com, I have original paintings, but mostly I have prints and cards. So I have prints and cards of everything here.
Okay, terrific. Good to know.
Yes.
Especially as it's Christmas time.
Right. Yes. So I have my book for sale and prints and cards on artandpoetry.com. So I want to talk a little bit more about the calligraphic line. And this was the piece that Skip showed when in inviting people to the webinar, or whatever this is, to the talk. And so this was on your email. This is called Just Dance. And so here, I just did this one last year, I think, or maybe 2 years ago. And this is a small one. It's on an 8.5 by 11 piece of paper, and my brush was an 8-inch wide brush that I put different paint on the brush, and then I just moved it across the whole page. So all those lines, all those colors. Well, I went back in a little bit after, but those main lines is one brush stroke.
Ooh.
And then in the middle, I went in and I added a little bit of color too. So I enhanced it somewhat, but most of it was just one line. And again, if I wasn't present, that line would be wavy, crooked, whatever. It wouldn't have worked. The other thing is, in doing like an enzo, or if I was going to do something for reproduction or to warm up, I might do 100 of these. Or, I mean, I actually did 99 for the enzo I have in my 2 as 1 book. All over my room. It's like, all right, here's that. You know, I go through tons of paper and I work on good paper just in case what I did was good. And so it's not always that I could just dash this off. I practice sometimes. This one, I think I did just dash off, but so it depends. But that dancing calligraphic line, I mean, that's what I love. That's why I call this calligraphy. I also call it lyrical abstract painting, which is a field around the abstract expressionist time, but people that was doing a little bit more fluid work with the line. This one is called Just Dance.
I like that title. I mean, that's a first impression, dance. And of course, I'm a dancer, so I see that. But I also see with the lines going across, like you're reading a musical score. And granted, musical scores are like 5 or 8 lines, but this is multiple lines and multiple layers and different colors. So it's again like music beyond earth. So I just also want to comment about what Jordan had said. You know, I think he nailed it. All of your poetry and your complementary artwork is really your higher self speaking to you and to us. So I just want to give you kudos, and these are all, you know, and like what Anna said, why it resonates with her is because there's a simplicity and clarity to your poetry that people can grab onto, and they don't have to try to intellectualize too heavily on it. It immediately grabs, you know, the understanding, the knowing. So I just wanted to express that. And again, thank you, Sherrie. You know, you are very in tune with your higher spirit. It just comes across very easily, and that's what I see.
It reminds me very much of a scene in the movie Pollock and the Jackson Pollock mural that was commissioned by Peggy Guggenheim, and he stared at a blank piece of canvas for, I don't know, 6 or 8 weeks, and this is depicted in the movie that he just stared at this canvas for 6 or 8 weeks, and then all of a sudden, in a burst of energy, he came forth and created that canvas, which is quite large. It's not as small as this, but it made tremendous difficulties for the people who now have that mural, because it was given to some museum in Missouri, I think. And there's actually a video made of what they had to do to curate that piece and try to figure out how he did it and what they had to do to keep it. And so it just reminds me of that scene where he was painting that.
I spend a lot of time, not on this painting, but on my bigger paintings, just looking at them until I know what the next step is. It doesn't all come. It's actually very difficult, some of these paintings to do. Yeah. And so it takes a lot of staring, and I usually have them on the floor, because then I'm 4 feet away from them or whatever. I'm not that short, but anyway, where my eyes are. But anyway, I get some distance from the painting, and I keep going back in and looking at them.
Sherrie, I can.
Oops.
I was going to say, Sherrie, I can feel the absolute lack of resistance and intense flow. As an architect, just you're kind of tortured into block lettering. And one year I just started not lifting the pen, and it became cursive in a way. And I realized you could almost tell how you feel by how your handwriting's coming out, and that bled into my paintings. But this calligraphy aspect, that when I hit it years back and on a couple of pieces it popped out, I went, that's the point. Okay. And it was, the intent was gone, and it was more important the way it came across. And I just feel that the way it come across here, I can just see where your brush would just hit the brakes hard and then barely lift up and then move to the next motion. And you want to make a treble clef in a word, in a letter, or a Hebrew character, and it doesn't need to, but it keeps your eye just literally, as Josh said, dancing. And that hand dance or hand trance of that motion that brings that about. It comes right across.
Great, yeah. And I think it took me like 5 seconds to do. It was really done fast.
Oh, and I think what's interesting, that whole, instead of 5 seconds, maybe your whole life up to that point,
Well,
and 99 in front of it, because you've got to get the kinks out. But then that one hits, and wow.
Yeah.
So I just want to say hello. I've known Sherrie since we're like 5 years old, and I'm loving this.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yes, and I'm learning so much about you, and I love you more than ever.
Oh, I love you too. That's so sweet. Thank you, Max. All right. And Maxine's a dancer too, so this is to all the dancers. Just dance. Take the bandage off your skin and dance. Stop the healing from the outside. No form of out there can help you. Take the ruins off your shelf and smash them. You don't need the past holding you where you don't want to be. Let your energy expand in every direction. There is no guide but silence. There is no path but here. There is no better, no worse, no up, no down. Only your deep inner wisdom longing to set you free. Dance and let your voice rise out of its cage. Don't try to tame that wild animal. She is your sanctuary, your savior. Dance and feel the rhythm of the beat. Dance and let your body move. Dance and wake your sleeping parts. Dance and then dance some more. That is dance.
So, Sherrie, when you sell prints of this, do you include the poetry, or?
Yes, I do. I have the poem on the back of it, and on the cards, the paintings on the front, the poems on the back, and they're blank inside.
Okay.
And they're all archivally printed. It's on a really fine velvet fine art paper with archival ink. So it's a very high quality print. They're all signed and numbered too.
Yeah, terrific.
Sherrie, I'm wondering about that last poem. if it has some autobiography in it, if you've been through some of what that you've written about, because it touches me so much today about that letting go, getting rid of the ruins and coming forth and let your energy and creativeness out. What
Yes.
was that? What did you struggle for that at some point?
Well, in my life, I've struggled through a lot of things. One of the things I have struggled with is chemical sensitivity and health issues. And I was when I was 26 doing that magazine, and it was we were printing it ourselves, and I got sick from the printing chemicals. So it's been and I was 26. It's been a lifelong struggle, and I get better like all the time. And so like me going into my older age, it's like I see more hope there. Like most people see a decline. I keep getting healthier and healthier. And so all of this, everything I do is trying to keep me healthy and well-bodied and take care of myself. So yes, wherever I've held myself back in other relationships, all sorts of things, this is like, all right, that time is over. This is my time to expand. And I think artists face struggles with, you're putting yourself out there all the time, and it's scary. So here it's like telling myself it's okay to let myself out of the cage and be who I am. So yes, I think it's also, yes, there is a wildness in me that sometimes I try to let it out more and more with my paintings and stuff, but there's still a ways to go. So this is a way to let myself know it's okay to be who I am and fully who I am and grow into it.
Thank you so much. That really is lovely.
Thank you for asking that.
Well, and you also said at the beginning, I think Nancy came in late, but that one of your goals was to go beyond the painting, and so that you dissolve and let yourself come through that painting. So that was one of her intentions.
Yes.
When she wanted to explore the deeper path of life, that was really an intention on your part.
Yes, and that was always since I was a teenager, and it was like you don't want guys to like you for your looks, you want them to like you for your brain or something like that, or maybe your soul. I was always after that. It was like what was important was who I am deep inside, and wanting to get that to be shown and known and to discover it myself. Yeah, it's all been a path in many different directions. But the painting, the poetry actually has always been part of it. That was my acorn that I have had a chance to let grow by my own determination. I've been self-employed since I was in my 20s, early 20s. I had my last real job, and have been finding other ways to do it.
Yeah, well, it definitely shows in your painting that you've got up there, because that is really, it contains what I would call the essence and the vibration that's preserved in that painting. The energy and everything just comes through. And it didn't come overnight, but it came. So
yes.
I just wanted to add to a point that was made before. So this is what a Sherrie painting and poem looks like on a wall.
Oh, you gotta stop my screen share and see that. Oh, there it is. Yes.
So that's a painting of Sherrie's, and we also hung the poem up below it, and it's a delight to have in our living room.
Terrific.
Thank you. That was an interesting painting. It was a collaboration. It's my only true collaboration. No, I used to collaborate with someone else, but this was a collaboration between a woman, Linda K. Stevens, from England, but we met in Corfu in Greece. And she's a painter and sort of has this wild, the kind of energy I always want to have, like this wild, crazy, free energy. And I'm kind of contained. And she just suggested that we do a collaboration. So I started it with some, it's hard to see, but just some kind of free, sort of the bluer part, and mailed it to her. She was in England, so I mailed it to her. And then she did her part and mailed it to me. And we went back and forth, I don't know how many numbers of times, 5 or 6 times, but over the course of, if I'm remembering right, it was like 5 years. I mean, we obviously didn't work on it a lot, but, and it was one point I thought it got lost. It was like Christmas time and it was almost done. And she had sent it to me and I didn't know it was going to come. And it got stuck in my post office for 4 months. And finally I went to the post office and I said, do you have like a tube for me of, and oh yeah, it's been sitting here, like for 4 months. So it was like, I got it back. But I had to go through all the letting go stuff. But so it combines her energy. It felt like we had different ways to create space. Hers was to fill it and mine was to calm it down. And so every time I got something back from her, I would try to tame it. And I think we didn't talk about it, but I think every time she got it from me, she wanted to like set it free. So it was a great combination of stuff.
Very interesting.
Great. I never heard that entire story, Sherrie. So thanks for.
Could you show it again while you're speaking, sir, so that you come up on?
Yeah. Oh, great. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I did sort of the watery stuff, but she did a lot of the different marks on it, and then in the end, I just decided I'm going to finish it today.
But the gentleman that has it on his wall, sir, if you would just say something so that Zoom will put you back on our screen.
Oh, yes. Okay. Let me speak. So there's a poem underneath called Spirit Rises, which I believe, Sherrie, you did not write that collaboratively. It's just yours, right?
That's just mine. Yeah.
So that hangs, we hung this right below the painting, and it's just a wonderful thing to have on our wall, and a piece of Sherrie's that's always with us.
Thank you. And that's how I do those poems. I print them out. I have a little border, and then I take a piece of the painting and put it onto that poem. If you could bring that a little closer again.
Yeah, and I'll speak up again so you can see this.
So it has a little image of the poem right underneath the title. So all my poems come with that when I do a show, because whenever I do a show that they allow me to hang my poems up, I do it that way. So.
Yeah, so
that's like a little family crest DNA strand.
Yeah, right. Yes, and they're always different. So the next 2 pieces are just paintings I want to show you. In terms of, we were talking about the calligraphic line, so a couple of others that I have emphasized here, the calligraphic line. And this was a painting, it's called Love Waits on Welcome. Oh, I do have that poem. I will read that then. And this was I did many layers of this. It was something I started. I didn't like what I was doing. I went over it. I think I even added some rice paper that gave me another layer. And then I just kind of just did this big mark and then painted it. And all of a sudden it was like, wow, this is coming together, because it's really a journey. And then I made those black marks, and it was a new brush I had made with this long hair, and just danced with it. So there's a calligraphy magazine called Letter Arts Review, and they showcase, it's a competition every year to get in. It's the level of calligraphy is getting so incredibly good. But I kind of push the edges, because this could very well be considered not calligraphy. I mean, I see it as calligraphy, but it's not calligraphy to what traditional calligraphers see. But this one got in. I was very happy. And this year I sent him Just Dance, so I'll see if that one gets in. I don't know if I'm pushing the borders of calligraphy too far or not. So I'll read this poem, Love Waits on Welcome. Leave room for empty spaces, the ones not filled in with every moment. The pause between notes where music dwells, the breath of air free of its past. Enjoy the bird's song without knowing what bird it is. Smell the fragrance without naming it. Let the mind sit, unattached, uncontrolling. Let lots be vacant, appointment books unfilled. Leave room for the unexpected and time to welcome love. That one is dedicated to our John Jackson.
Thank you. Thank you.
It's beautiful, Sherrie.
Thank you. And then this one also, I want to talk about that when you just have one stroke to do, back to the chi in the painting. And this was a class demo. So I was demonstrating just how to use the brush. It was a 4-inch wide brush. And I was using actually paint, gouache, not ink this time. So it had a little softer mark. And I put some water on the paper. And this is something I do quite often, especially when I teach. So you're not in control. So you could spritz some water or just throw on some water on the paper or brush some on. And you don't have the control of the whole thing. And then, how do you go with that? So I made that first mark on the left. And then on the corner of the same brush, I made that mark on the right. And then I go in with, it's a little metal pen that I made out of a sardine can where I cut it to shape and fold it. And I scratched into the paint. And then as I drew the line across horizontally, it pulled some of the ink. And then I did the gold leaf circle at home. I didn't want to, there was a point where I just said in class, all right, I'm just going to leave this. And then I went home to finish it. So it's called Turning Point. And a lot of my recent poems have been influenced by the local fires. I mean, I've been in California, Santa Rosa. The past 4 years, I've had to vacate for a week at a time. This time I had to go away for a week, another time, another week. So we've been really affected by all those local fires, but happily my place is still good.
When you pulled your pen across the larger swoosh, that was immediately after. I mean, you did it, you put the swoosh and then you pulled your pen through right away, or you did it later?
The swoosh is, wait.
So the swoosh on the left, you said
that
you
big
put
long
it,
stroke?
yeah, you
That's
put
done
it
first.
And did you immediately then do the piece with the pen, or?
It was first that part on the left, then the part on the right. Then I did a little walnut ink, that brown ink underneath that center part.
Mm-hmm.
And then I did the scratching in, but everything was still wet. So that mark, again, this took me, very short period of time. So it's still wet. And I did that mark while it was still wet.
Okay, understood.
Yeah, and this, you're right. This was shortly after we met. And when we met, and then you had to evacuate because of the fires.
Mm-hmm.
And then this was up in a show at the Center for the Arts here in Sebastopol. And I remember going to look at it, and I'd looked at it beforehand online, but when I walked up and looked at it, I realized that that stroke on the left was actually with a pretty big brush. Wasn't it 4 inches or
4-inch
something
brush?
like that? Yeah. It's remarkable. Yeah.
Yeah, so the painting's around 30 inches tall. Mm-hmm. I think, maybe it's 15 inches tall. Something like that, between 20 and 30. And it's called Turning Point. And I wrote the poem after, I wrote this separately, but felt they went together. Turning Point. When everything is lost, we realize there is something that cannot be lost. Something we have never seen or touched. Something we cannot name, but we can feel. It leads us on. A resilience comes from somewhere else, and we know we can make it because there is no other choice than to rebuild and start again. But it is not from scratch. Our depths have been challenged, and we will never be the same. And when a community shares this experience, there is no telling where it will lead. And then I have one more poem that awaits its painting. So this continues in space. It's called Passing Through. I borrow this dust from a lonely planet, earth rotting and dry, scaffolding sent to the heavens, wanting more. I borrow this heart from a worn out soldier, sharing a victory or defeat, lost in the questions, lost in himself. I borrow these eyes from the one who sees beyond the surface, into the lagoon of many faces, into the water of life. I hold it all, heart in hand, visions of better days, freer, more alive. My longings cast on the mountain, scattered. Some held back to ignite me now, as I rise through the blanket of ash, wafting through snippets of dreams, trying to make sense of the path I'm on, consoling the losses, encouraging the remains.
Lovely. I want to see the painting.
All right, I'll send it to you when it's done. Anything anyone wants to add to this or say?
Well, not specifically about your painting, but I want to ask about a painting, as long as we have two psychiatrists here. But I want to finish with your material first.
Oh, I actually want to show one more thing that I'm working on now. And this has been a practice, what I call, well, actually, the title is A Daily Practice Through the Pandemic.
Uh-huh.
And it's a book. I was taking a bookbinding class and I made this book. It's 4 inches tall, 3 inches wide. It has 360 pages in it. And it has become my practice to do a page every day. And so they're all different. They're usually just, I pick up the tools I have on my desk. Sometimes they relate to paintings I have. Some are more calligraphic than others. This actually has A, B, C, X, Y, Z on it. Some more alphabet stuff. And it's really been a wonderful little thing to have. It was actually at a show for a month and a half, and I didn't realize how much I missed it. So
Wow,
I'm back to doing it again. So
it's breathtaking. It's breathtaking.
Thank you. So no poems with these, but lots of fun. And I think this is my latest one.
Speak up again so we can see it when you're speaking. So it.
That was the last one.
Yeah. Say something.
Oh, I'm sorry. So that was the book. Did you got to see that? Or
yeah,
not?
Yeah, now I did.
Okay.
Fantastic.
Oh, was I blocking my audio maybe?
Yeah, when in order to see you in full size, especially for the YouTube replay, we have to get you to speak so that you come up in speaker view, because it's my computer that controls what's on the replay.
Right. Okay. So did that work well enough? Or
yes, I think it did. So what are you going to do about publishing that?
I don't know yet. I don't know. I started scanning them in. I don't know. That's a nice.
I mean, in a way, it reminds me of the Red Book, and I just, as I was looking at it, and One of our followers on YouTube says incredible, but I just found it breathtaking when you were just showing, going through it.
Mhm.
And, the question is, how can you take something like that and turn it into something that you as an artist could sell? Because obviously the original is priceless. It's literally priceless, as we know about the Red Book. I mean, that's been in a vault in Switzerland for the last 60 years or more, and we have nice pictures of it, but we don't have the real thing. But it would be great to have something like that,
Yeah.
but in actual size too.
Right. Yes. Uh-huh.
And
Yeah.
so I don't know, it's something to think about. Just breathtaking.
Thank you. Thanks.
I think part of the breathtaking too is it's just so original. And I mean, I can see, like Skip, you mentioned about Jackson Pollock, but I also see a bit of Miro in there, and maybe a little touch of Salvador, but just it's a lot of this deep abstraction, and that goes beyond beyond words. So again, I go back to that movie Arrival. If an alien came on this planet and saw this, they would be reading it. I mean, we're
Right.
taking it in as art, but they're saying, wow, we're learning about human history here, or the human soul, or we're connecting with the universe, or whatever you call it, God, or the inner self, or the higher self. But there's a connection. And Jordan said, there is a connection, and it really speaks very, very clearly. I think, I mean, if you got the right publisher or, publicist, I think, this is, yeah, you're a world-class artist. I mean, in my mind, but I'm not an artist, but I'm just retired psychiatrist. But if it hits somebody who doesn't know art, you know what I mean? I think it can have a great impact to a lot of people around the world. So again, what I'm doing is expressing my compliments to you. Thank you very much, Sherrie.
And I think part of doing something like this is that it's quick. It's like very often when we see in a museum, you get to see the artist's sketches, and then you see their painting. It's like their sketches were like so alive, and then something gets lost in the translation. These are sort of like my sketches. They're really quick. They're fun. I usually do them late at night. It's usually like the end of the day. I wish I would do it earlier, but it's like, all right, I got to do this before I go to bed, so I hurry up and do it.
Well, Sherrie, I urge you to join into our Collective Unconscious project also, because, I would hesitate to do so because you're a professional artist, but on the other hand, it's being led by two other professional artists who are Colleen Kubert and Tim Holmes. And what we're doing is on the 12th of December, we're doing a doodle, what Colleen calls a doodle. We did this on the 8th of November, so you can see what we did the first time around, which was we all did daily doodles throughout the pre-election period, and then one after the election. And I put them together, 25 artists participated, and I put them together in one long PowerPoint, which is what the video is. And it's quite interesting. But on the 12th of December, we're going to do a draft of what 2020 means to us, a single image. And then on New Year's Day, we're going to do what 2020 did mean to us. Okay, that will be the final 2020. And then on January 30th, we're doing our our hopes for 2021. And the purpose of it is to demonstrate how the collective unconscious is a common thing across age groups and distances and so on. And it's a very interesting project. So I would urge you and any other artist to join us for those exercises.
I think, Skip, you put the links for those in the
I did, yeah.
email that you sent out about today's meeting, right?
I did, and I will be sending them out again as well. Right before the events. But the idea is that it's a doodle of one image that represents 2020, and so we're going to do a trial run on December 12th, then a final version, which won't necessarily be the same image on New Year's Day, and then on January 30th, we're going to do our hopes for the new year, which will be after the new president is sworn in. So we'll know the whole story of what's going on now after Inauguration Day. That was the purpose of making it the 30th and not the 23rd, which is when we were thinking about doing it. But we would love to have you. And if you, because you're a professional artist, I'll put you at the end of the program with Tim and Colleen, where we're all us amateurs are going to talk about ours, and then the final three, as it currently stands, is me, then Tim, then Colleen. But I would make it me, then you, then Tim, then Colleen.
Okay. It sounds fascinating. I would love to.
Yeah, take a look at the video that we did of the last one. It's quite interesting to see what happened in that. Okay, so other comments?
Anna just pointed out to me that Maxine put something up in the chat. It said, how wonderful to see all of the different moods of the day that you are externalizing. Beautiful.
Yes, it's really beautiful.
Thank you, Max.
Yeah.
Well, this has been wonderful. Thank you for this opportunity to share what it is I do, and thank you for your responses.
Right.
Conversations.
Well, we really appreciate your being here, and perhaps we can do it again sometime. And your little book brings that idea to mind too, but because I'd like to see it a little more than just your flash through. But
speaking of that little book, honestly, if I saw in same size as the original in a museum gift shop, and I got two images in, and I'm going, wait, is this an anthology? This is the same person. It's not an anthology. And the moods of just literally the flow. There's just that purity and honesty. I would be, oh, okay, I need to buy 3 because there's 1 for me and 2 gifts. I mean, so just that little bitty, the museum quality gift books where you get the smaller versions, the little microtures, so to speak. I could see that there, and I mean, I would just scoop it right up.
Yeah.
No.
So, go ahead.
The publisher. I mean, that's not something I could probably self do, but maybe it can happen. I hadn't been thinking about that actually.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So I have a question, if others don't mind, which is about this unconscious flow and presenting it. I have a number of adopted daughters and granddaughters for some reason around the world. And one of them is an artist, and she's from Gaza. And last summer, she had an internship in the US Congress, and she was here, and she spent a couple of weeks here at my house. And so because I knew she was an artist, I said, well, let's go out and paint the beautiful scene that we have in front of our dock, which actually looks out on the Bay Bridge, and this was a beautiful sunny day. So let's go both paint and then see what we get. And so we did that, and I didn't look at her painting while she was doing it, but you can imagine the scene of the sunshine. It was a cloudless sky. It was sailboats everywhere and so on. And so at the end of it, she showed me her painting, and I went, whoa. That was my reaction to it. So she left it for me, and I'll just hold it up here for you, because I don't have, well, let me see here. I'm going to have to get rid of my virtual background here. Sorry about this. Okay, so here it is. I don't know if I can get far enough away from it.
Wow.
So that's what she saw, and that's what she presented.
It's a little hard to see.
I was afraid to comment on it, but I wonder if you have any comments on it.
It looks like incredible, skillful work. It was hard to see the details, so it's hard, I can't quite.
Yeah, let me try to do it again here. Okay, so it's predominantly very dark. One of her things is always an eye. She always shows an eye in her paintings. I'm having to do this backwards from what I'm seeing. And it does have a couple of numbers. It has 0 and 5 in it, it looks like. And it's very, very dark, and so I thought we were going out on the dock to paint this beautiful scene that was there, and this is what she painted. And so I wonder if any of you have any comment on that.
I love that she just did what she wanted to do, that you had some idea of this and what it should look like, and she just went ahead and painted what she wanted to paint. And yeah. I think that's an amazing thing.
Judith just made a wonderful comment in the chat of that she really appreciates that she painted what she responded to rather than what she was seeing. Yeah. So it's painting. So it's very abstract expressionist in a way where the scene was dictation, and she took down what she felt.
Well, and of course, as Gazan Palestinian, she has had quite a complex life. And for example, even when she was here for the 9 weeks, she was interning in the office of Ilhan Omar. And the result of that was she was taking phone calls that were directed to Ilhan, and notwithstanding whatever her life has been in Gaza, but I can tell you what it is, which is that when she left her home to come, I've actually gotten her 3 trips to the United States. And when she left her home for the second one in 2017, I guess, was the last time she saw her parents. And for young Gazans who are upwardly mobile and have a ability to do something in the world significantly, they get out of Gaza somehow, and then then they can never go home, because the Israeli government would basically put them back in prison put them in the prison of Gaza if they came back. And so she actually had to leave her family knowing that she was never going to come back. And she went to Qatar and got a fellowship to study a master's degree in journalism in Qatar. And then in the midst of that, she got this internship with Ilhan Omar for 7 weeks, I guess. And so, I mean, there was a lot emotionally going on in her psyche when she was doing that. But
I have a question, and it's maybe rhetorical. I wonder if the peaceful serenity actually disturbed her because it was completely countergrain to what she was used to with all the terrible conflict. And so to me, I wonder if it hit her like a ton of bricks and it was actually probably fearful, like she got T-boned by calmness. I mean, John, could you speak to that?
Well, it's very much, I think, you know, when you've been through troubled relationships in your life and you finally get into a good one, I mean, you think you'd be happy immediately, right? It's like, whoa, where am I?
yeah,
yeah, you can't see it, and you think nothing's happening.
Yeah, and
well,
and that's what they say too. Is when in pathological or unhealthy relationships, it's like you're like this. You're up close. It's like I own you. And when you're in a healthy relationship, it's like, well, where are you? You're so far away.
Yeah. Well, I give you another example. This is she and me at the Congress last summer when she was doing a presentation, and this painting of hers, she gave me at my request, and it's called "The Mother of the Martyr Kept the Governor Waiting at the Peace Ceremony." That's the name of that painting. But I mean, you can see how emotive her painting normally is, and also very dark, of course. And so just wondered if you had any thoughts about that.
I think that's a good observation, Jordan.
Yeah.
Thank you. It feels like she's living in the phonic, and we have a reversal here. We're trying to till that. She's kind of come from that in a way.
Yeah, there's something to that, definitely. So anyway, I had the good news from her yesterday that after her degree, she's now found a job in Qatar. So that's good.
Thank you, John, for that.
Yeah.
Well, here, I want to show another one of Sherrie's paintings.
Oh, yeah.
Love and Hope, right?
Yep. Mm-hmm.
This is one that I own, which I love. And I remember there used to be, there's not now because of the virus, art trails where you open up your home and all your paintings are on the wall. And I found this painting at Sherrie's home. And I told her, this is a painting I would have bought anywhere if I found it. But how would I have found it if I didn't know you? Yeah, I love this painting, truly. Yeah. I'll show you one more since you asked about it at the beginning.
John, you're going to show yours?
What it's like to be one of Sherrie's students. This is my very first painting ever. And you can see the elements that she taught me.
Oh, wow. That's great, John.
That is excellent.
And the thing about that dark line is, I mean, I don't know where this came from, but I think Sherrie kind of taught me this too. But what she taught us was a line doesn't have to be a straight line. And I held the brush in my hand, and I did that thing. I just stood there in her class. I do this. I stare at the painting for a long time and then add the thing that comes. But that dark line is one brushstroke. And it all came because she said, a line doesn't have to be a straight line. And I'm so grateful, for what I've learned in your classes, Sherrie. You're a great teacher.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks. And it's been interesting having John in class because he goes off on his own thing and he's really taking things I taught him, but in his own way. And of course, as a teacher, that's what I want. And I just love the strength and power of that painting. It feels,
I cherish it.
yeah.
Well, also it looks like a Chinese character.
Yes, it
In
does.
a rough way, it looks like the meaning for happiness.
Or the sword compressed. It struck me as the Japanese sword calligraphy that had been distorted this way, but also Mount Fuji cloud that had moved off to the side of the mountain. I mean, I love the healthy ambiguity because just like nature, you can see so many things in it, and that has that, especially that line. It's very alive.
Yeah.
I like the red dot on there on the mountain.
I learned that from Sherrie.
Very Miro.
Yeah, and very Eastern. Some
Yes.
Eastern part of you is coming out, John.
Well,
What was the little
Hawaii.
orb? The orb in the mountain. There was like a dark circle that had some halo on the, I guess it would be your left side. And in the mountain, there felt to be a circle that was dark over on the bottom right.
It's the red dot I was talking about.
Oh, it's red. Okay.
Well, it's black and it's got a red dot in the middle. So.
Okay, we're looking at the same thing. Okay.
Yeah. Well, not that I'm much of an artist, but in the context of what John was saying, I want to share the beginning of an artist explanation because I did some art, especially between 1995 and 2005. And I did 3 exhibitions in 2005, and I basically haven't touched anything since. But speaking to what Sherrie is talking about, and also John, I guess I can share the top of this. I'm not going to share the whole thing because my art isn't relevant, but this is my explanation because I thought I had to explain why I don't have any straight lines and I can't draw a straight line. So I said, you will not find a straight line in my exhibition this evening. Not only none of the lines are straight, but even the curved lines do not have regular curves. Instead, they're rather squiggly lines. That's all right because the subconscious, I probably should have said unconscious mind, engages and adjusts for disorder in imagery. So you will see the lines as straight and the curves as regular regardless, or at least that's how you will remember them. In my opinion, this is a partial explanation for the power of Jackson Pollock's work. He intentionally made no recognizable image, but that did not stop the audience's minds from trying to adjust to regularize an image. So the subconscious mind becomes engaged in the viewing of his work, evoking emotion and intensity. So that was my comment on that for what it's worth. Not a heck of a lot.
I'd just like to thank Sherrie for encouraging me today because I think my own kind of painting, I respond like you do, not to poetry, but to things that emerge in my life. An image might come to me or something gets healed and there's an awakening of some kind. But I've never thought, I mean, I shouldn't say never, but I've only very recently begun to think of that intuitive painting as art. And what you've helped me see today is that what I am doing has merit. And that means a great deal to me.
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing that. And it does. And of course it does. Yes. So I encourage you to go ahead with it. And also keep the judgment away from it. Like just do it and enjoy it for what it is.
Yeah,
then-
the judgment is the hard part. To keep that judgment out is hard.
Yeah.
That's so true, you know, in writing poetry and writing prose, in doing art. I mean, get the editor out of the room.
Mhm.
And I think I heard Neil Gaiman say once that, you know, that the secret to having a great novel is having an absolutely terrible first draft.
Yeah. Well, you start with mud, you know, and you make porcelain, and you make regular porcelain. I laughed. One of my best lessons was the biggest failure ever. First time I did an ink wash, and it was like an old Oil of Olay commercial, black and white, just pristine, almost calligraphy of a photograph, just high contrast. And I nailed it. And it's like looking at it. And the professor stops behind me. And of course, I'm, 19, in college. So I'm still, you know, looking for approval. You know, is this okay? I've never done it before. I don't have any sovereignty or idea that it's a good or bad. I'm looking for what he says. And he says nothing. Well, what was interesting is he was my student in the advanced martial arts class that I taught. And now I'm his art student in this class. So not only role reversal, but he took the reins because he said nothing. And he goes all the way around the class, and you could see him downshift and slow down. You felt the pace, like, I'm just hung out to dry. So he gets about halfway over, and I'm like, well, he's coming. I got to finish it now. She had the worst skin condition. The background was just polluted with just discordant everything. And he came back around and he goes, that's the thing about beauty, huh? You just had to touch it, didn't you? Just had to touch it.
Oh, wow.
And that day I learned, when I get to that point, flip the brush. So I've got the back end of the brush. And if I try to do something, I'll realize it's not making a mark. Don't touch it. So there's just this, you know, you have this and there becomes just flip it. So if I'm going to sit here, because I can't leave, you're magnetized, but just had to touch it. And my heart sank. It's like, oh, I messed this up beyond belief, you know. But so that whole the editor at the end too, when you kind of come back, you know, back away, like you said, John, get a healthy relationship and let it be itself. Don't try to change it. So, anyway,
what a lesson.
You know, it's so simple. I'll never forget. It's indelible, and it became the right editor, which was okay. Edit myself to a greater distance from the painting, out of arm's length. You know.
Yeah.
Well, and in Sherrie's classes, you know, I mean, sometimes, I mean, I know that one time I had a painting, I absolutely, completely ruined it. And she came over and she said, put it underwater. So I went to the sink and ran it underwater, and it came out. And I think that's the one that actually got into the juried show. I mean, what was left at the end?
That's beautiful. That's beautiful. That is beautiful. It just needed a bath. It just came in dirty from play.
Yeah, well, this is what I try to tell people in everything that I do on this YouTube channel about creativity. You have to connect with or about the unconscious. You need to connect with your unconscious, and the way to do that is through creativity. And what I point out is that I get in touch with my unconscious almost every morning because I make an omelet for my wife, and the omelet is never the same because I'm not a very well, we would in the MBTI, I would say I'm not J. I'm definitely way out on the P scale. So therefore, I don't have a strict regimen by which I make an omelet. The omelet will have this and will have this. No, I come to the kitchen and every morning is a new experience, and I pull stuff out of the refrigerator and I remember, oh yeah, I need eggs, you know, but by doing that each morning, and it takes 10 or 15 minutes to make this omelet, it opens up my communication with my unconscious every day. And it's the same type of thing that you're talking about here. Sure.
Yep. Would you be interested in doing an omelet doodle book? Take a picture as they each come out each day.
They're different too each time.
I mean,
I won't think about it. the omelet to describe 2020. Now that
the goat cheese popped out here, the red pepper popped out there.
Right. I'll think about that, Jordan. I might start taking pictures, but
I mean, the way you were talking about it, it's a doodle. It's an omelet.
It's definitely a doodle.
Edible doodles.
Right, and
I think the final thing of art and poetry and all the things we do is to make it internal, to live from that place. Like, what can it teach us about life, and how do we live from there? Whatever that means to us, but.
And that's so important about what it is we've been trying to do on this YouTube channel for 5 years, is to help people understand that very point. Just, I mean, even the process of building this YouTube channel and arranging these sessions that we've had is my creativity, the way it's presented today in the last 5 years. I mean, I stopped doing painting, but I started to do this instead. And you know, in the past I did writing, but whatever it is, everyone needs to have some sort of creative outlet in order to have this communication with the other side of your psyche, the unconscious side. I don't know if John or Joss will concur with that, but that's my opinion. That's my.
I agree with you, and what you read that you wrote in 2005 was pretty spot on. Yeah, very good.
Sherrie, I have a comment about your enzo, the multi-layered with the gold powder.
Yes.
You said strange creature, and it stuck out in my mind because this morning I go through just kind of habit of just look through images, just steep. And I came across a dragon seahorse, which I had never seen before. And they have multiple differentiated body parts. They're a lot longer. But that enzo with the multiple strata of depths running through it looked strangely almost like a Charles Darwin level drawing of a dragon seahorse. Just may take a look to. And it was a kind of a beautiful visual synonym, and I'd never seen one. And this morning I went, well, where'd that come from? And I saw that. I went, oh, now I know why I saw that this morning.
I didn't see it as an animal until someone told me it was some like underwater animal, or something. I forget what you called it. But I kind of hate when people, say, oh, I see this, I see that, and then all of a sudden, every time I see the painting, I see that instead of the painting. But that's cool.
Well, so actually, I would tend to agree go backwards because it's the living animal called art.
Yeah, and I'd just like to mention in terms of art that imagery can really help your memory, and a lot of you will remember we had a session with Melissa Townsend about the Yoga Sutras of Patanjali. Well, I, among others, encouraged Melissa to turn her artworks that relate to that writing, which is in Sanskrit and then translated by Melissa, into cards. And so she has done, and her deck of cards is going to be available. And the reason I think that that's important is I bought her a translation of the Patanjali, at least the first two volumes of it. There's ultimately going to be 4 volumes, but she hasn't completed the paintings for volume 3, but she did a painting on each verse of the Patanjali. So far there's over 100 paintings. And what I found was happening to me when I started to read her book, read her translation and look at the paintings, was that the paintings helped me to memorize the Yoga Sutra. So anyway, we're going to revisit that on the 13th of December. At this, I guess we're going to do it at 1 o'clock Eastern time in order to reach your, or 2 o'clock. I think I said 2 o'clock on Eastern time, so it'll be 11 Pacific. And sorry, Joss, it's 8 a.m. for you in Hawaii. But anyway, she's done these cards, and we're going to talk about the way these cards can be used as a mental jog. Because I was finding myself just in meditation, just going through the series of the Yoga Sutra in terms of the images. I couldn't remember all of her translation, and I certainly didn't understand or remember the Sanskrit, but I could remember the images. And it's a very interesting just experience that I had, and I want to share it in that way on the 13th. So anyway.
Sherrie, before we close, can you mention or comment on the two pictures behind you, or you're in between on your screen?
I started looking at that and thinking I look like I either have angel's wings coming out of me or something. So I was thinking, well, probably not the best pictures to have chosen. But anyway, this is a piece that is in my book. Trying to remember the name of it. But also it had the circle, and then these are Asemic writing pieces, words. And that was kind of one of the earlier ones I did, where I actually looked at some Japanese script, Chinese writing, and then maybe something in between the two of them. And I kept practicing those marks. And then finally I said to myself, and they weren't working. And I said, I want this to be beautiful. And so then I held the word beautiful in me as I did them. And it worked. I thought, because it was another make it or break it, moment. And so I was pleased with those. So it's sort of an Asemic Asian writing, or Asemic Chinese writing, I don't know. And so the original these are prints. The original has some gold leaf. I work a lot with gold leaf, real 20, 23, 24 karat gold leaf. And it's sort of something I take from illuminated manuscripts and bring into the present work. This one is called Contemplative Still Life. And it has a layer of gesso on it. So I did first some underpainting, and then I put gesso, which is what people prime canvases on. So it gave me another layer to work with. And then actually in there, and you can't see it, are some of the flower of life circles that I did with a compass. And so, and then I did the half the enzo. And so, and it sort of has like a windowsill, sort of a window behind it. So that's where I called it Contemplative Still Life, and a touch of yellow. It was in a show called Yellow. So that's why the yellow was there rather than another color.
I have to say, I feel you chose really wisely.
Oh, did I?
Because when those came up at the beginning, my eyebrows both went up, which is kind of my clue to, not one or the other, but both. And I was back and forth trying to listen too, but back and forth going, is the one over here, the bigger one, is that a microscopic detail zoom in of, and I was going, there was this shift focus and redirect scale game. And then I started noticing the background on the big one. And I'm like, oh no, there's too much darkness. They're different. No, they're not. I mean, so did it change when it got bigger? So I really think they make a great pairing. The small and the large.
Thank you.
Okay, so thank you so much, Sherrie, for being here. And I can assure you that I'm interested in some of your work for Christmas presents this year. Tim has a book that he wrote called Random Gifts of Art. And I actually bought 4 copies of that book as for Christmas gifts this year. But in the book, the objective of it is for people to give the book, which includes within it many of Tim's drawings in it. But I was thinking, boy, there's something missing here. I'd have to have some art to go with the book, because the idea is there's spaces for each person that has the book to put their name in, and then make a gift of the book to somebody else. But I was thinking of wanting to have some art to go with it. So now I know where to get it.
So yes, go visit my website, please, artandpoetry.com. I bought that name from someone who was selling my calligraphy prints back, I don't know, 20 or 30 years ago, whenever. It was a long time ago. And it was I held on to the name Art and Poetry, and I felt like I would grow into it at some point. And that's what I do now, is art and poetry. So
Yeah, you sure did.
All the links are in the chat box.
Okay.
You were very smart to do that. I had a friend at one point who bought like 10,000 names when they were first made available, and with the idea that he would resell them. And so you were very smart to get that
Yeah.
name and control it. That's very good.
Yeah.
Anything else, anybody, before we break for the day?
Just want to thank you all again. This was beautiful sharing this with you.
Yes, thank you, Sherrie.
Yeah,
That was
thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
very nice.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.